Nata Edwards makes his weekly appearance. We take a Sicko Satchel question. What does a successful and unsuccessful offseason look like for the Hornets? Plus, we have some critical combine questions for you with Doug going to Chicago. All today, Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, as always. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. He's also hosting Locked On NBA. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. And last but not least, a little bit of an audible this week. He's on with us on a Wednesday. We appreciate Nata for joining us every week. Nata Edwards, Ion College basketball podcast producer with Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish, and a family member of the Locked On Hornets podcast, atmosphere, universe, all of it. Nata, welcome. How are you doing, man?
Well, I was looking in like the family fridge and everything, and where's my Coke Zero? Like, it's not there anymore. Did y'all move it? Like, you drank it, Doug, didn't you?
Yeah. Sorry,
I appreciate that.
I go through phases with drinks. I like to mix it up so it's not just like monotony. I go through my routines, but I'll break up my routines, especially with getting drinks before and during the shows. Like you can see, Locked On Hornets, I got my coffee every morning. I've been doing Coke Cherry Zero for Wes and Walker throughout. And, phew, buddy, tasty. Like me, some Coke and cherry. And it's nice without the calories because I got to watch the figure. Got to watch the belly. Don't want that to shake as much. Let's move on. Speaking of bellies we don't want to shake. All the bellies at the combine. We don't want those bellies shaking. And we want them to be as athletic as possible, especially if the Hornets are going to consider taking one of those guys with a top 5 pick. Hopefully we don't have to have a debate. Hopefully it's just Cooper and we call it a day. But if the Hornets don't win the lottery, then we have a real conversation. Doug, I'll let you steer this because you're going to the Combine. Combine is your baby this year. Congratulations. You're a dad again. Where do you want to lead us in this conversation with Nata? What kind of Combine questions do you have for him?
Yeah, this is my first Combine. I've been asking some of the guys at Big Board, at Locked On NBA Big Board, what their experiences there are, trying to get a little bit of a lay of the land. But I want to know from the college basketball expert, Nata Edwards, which of these players would have the most incentive to come into this combine and play well, measure well, drill well? I mean, you take this where you want to, Nata. What are the players that you've identified that need a really good combine to either cement where most people have them in the draft or even possibly rise?
I would start with VJ Edgecombe because if he's anything close to, if he's closer to 6'2" than 6'4", I'm not sure he's a top 5 pick. I like him. I think he's a very, very good player. But at the same point, with that athleticism, I'm not sure in this league, I'm not sure his athleticism is going to surpass what he can really do at this point. The other guy I would think of is Derik Queen, who hopefully comes in closer to 6'10", even though I do have questions about how effective a offensive only center and has to work significantly on his defensive prowess goes in the top 10. I do have some questions about that. The last guy that I would probably point out is St. Joe's forward Rasheer Fleming. 6'9" guy. He's on everybody's radar. 6'9" guy with a 7-foot wingspan, can score, and I would say he could be this year's Jalen Williams, where he's not on everybody's radar until very, very late, and then he ends up being a lottery pick. I think Rasheer Fleming has a lot of potential in terms of being one of those guys that can rise. And granted, he may not be in the Hornets' range if they pick, but at the same point, if the Hornets are about getting a second first-round pick, he should absolutely be in the mix for them.
I like a good name we haven't talked about before, so that's a good one with Fleming that you bring up out of St. Joe's is what you said?
St. Joe's, yes.
Okay. Word to Jameer Nelson and Delonte West. I did want to talk about some of the other combine winners of years past and like how much it matters. Because I have a very good feel about how much the NFL draft combine matters. I'm one that believes athleticism matters in athletics. So I think the testing for NFL combine, I think that's something that you can actually attribute to some NFL success. Not always, right? There's all sorts of nuance that you can bring into it. But hey, man, some of these guys are worthy of a first-round pick. If they got their head on straight and they also have a 50-inch vert, I'm going to be interested in what I can do with you as a head coach in my system. Like the guys I can remember really benefiting, Nata, Reed Shepherd last year.
Yes. With
little old Reed Shepherd going out there and posting one of the best vertical standing and max, I believe, among all the guards. Okay, yes, please with that shooting. I remember Jalen Williams just crushing it. Like, we were worried about his athleticism. And then 5-on-5 drills, he was just so clearly the best player out there. Gets drafted one slot ahead of the Hornets, and now Jalen Williams, one of the best young players in all the NBA. How much does the NBA draft combine matter? Because I have a harder time like attributing some of those successes to how it actually works out when you're playing basketball in the association.
I think it matters more if you're outside of the lottery than you're inside of the lottery. Because I mean, we talked off wax quite literally. KJ Simpson put himself on the radar with a great combine performance with his athleticism. I would tell you that it's easier to talk yourself out of a position. It's one of those reasons why I'm kind of interested in what happens with Ace Bailey next week, because if he doesn't necessarily perform well, or if he doesn't, I'm not necessarily perform, but if he doesn't interview well, and if he ends up being closer to 6'7", 6'8", then we're talking about a guy that may not end up getting picked top 5 with all the warts. And then you're hoping that Philly, again, if he seems like an ideal Philly type of player, because it's one of those things. But I really do kind of think this is going to make or break a lot of people below the lottery. Yaxel Lendenborg is a guy who I know we mentioned last week is closer to 6'10", is going to be one of those forwards that are going to be in that 20 to 35 range. He's another guy. Like a lot of those sub-lottery guys and those second-round guys, a lot of those guys can be affected by what happens in Chicago.
If I were to fall in love with one draft combine, what would you call it, drill? If I were to fall in love with one drill, which drill should it be? Like if I were to just fanboy, what is it, lane agility? Is it shuttle?
Yeah, it's a shuttle run because, again, this team needs defenders and guys that actually can stay in front of their man. It'll probably be that one for you, Doug.
I'm a little scared I'm going to get so involved in the shuttle drill that's all I come back with. Like I come back, I think I come back Wednesday or Thursday on the show, and I'm just going to be talking all shuttle drill all the time.
Forward to this.
Well, and the way Doug's producer brain works is we're going to have a segment called the Shuttle Shuffle, and we're going to go down the best shuttle times, I should say. I'm already messing up. We're going to go down the best times posted by all of Doug's draft roses, because he's going to have given out 7 draft roses by that time, and we'll have a Shuttle Shuffle by the time that he comes back and does a segment for us.
I just wrote myself a note too. I got to figure out which Hornets people are going to be there. I mean, obviously, if I see Jeff Peterson, I'm going to know who Jeff Peterson is. But there are a lot of these scouts and different people from the Hornets that are going to be there that I don't necessarily know their faces. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of research here, stalking.
I wouldn't be surprised if Longstaff. I think a lot of the assistant coaches are going to be there for this one because they're going to want to put eyes on these guys.
Now, what you really should do is you should get a Hornets polo and act like you're a scout yourself while you're there. And fun story, but real quick story. My grandfather used to do this. So he would wear my dad played for Wabash, and Wabash up in Indiana played Centenary against Robert Parrish. And so my grandpa went to that game with I believe a Pacers polo at the time, because they were in the ABA, if I'm not mistaken. And then so people were coming up to him and saying, "You paying attention to this Robert Parrish kid?" He said, "Yeah, this Robert Mail kid though, he's really catching my eye." It's a good grandpa. It's a good dad. It's a good dad move. Good grandpa move.
Did Robert now Robert Parrish was the chief. Did Robert Mail have a decent nickname?
I'm the only one that calls him chief. Yeah, no, not anybody else. Yeah, so he's chief to me, but Robert Parrish is chief to everybody else. That's about it. All right, coming up next, Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
My dad could dunk pretty well, so he'd probably do decent in the
So that
combine.
didn't
But
pass
man,
in the genetics, is what you're telling me?
no, it did not. No, my one of my brothers got the jumping ability. Another one of my brothers is a plotter like myself. But I got the weight. My dad weighed like 160 pounds soaking wet, so he'd get pushed around. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we answer more critical combine questions and also answer sicko satchel questions. All sorts of questions coming up next. LOH. This episode is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on, and that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets you manage business calls and text from a single app, and the shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. Their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. More Locked On Hornets ahead. The joke never leaves my brain when I do Open Phone with Jeff Peterson needing this so he doesn't miss any calls during the deadline, doesn't miss any calls during NBA draft day. This is something you've gone with as well, Doug.
Yeah, or any shuttle drill results. I can't wait. I really can't wait to focus in on this shuttle drill.
At this point, like Doug, I'm telling you now, Rasheer Fleming is going to be a draft crush of yours. I guarantee you.
Why? Because he's gonna nail the shuttle drill.
Shuttle drill, 6'9", 7-foot wingspan. You telling me that's not like in your wheelhouse of draft crushes?
I'm just saying, watch out for me in Chicago because I'm going to be asking everyone, what's the shuttle butt? I'm going to be wearing a T-shirt that says I'm a shuttle slut. It's going to be
great.
Oh my God! Already, I love it. I want that T-shirt made right now. I want it up for purchase on TeePublic right now. Damn it! I would absolutely buy it. Let's get to a sicko satchel question, Doug. What do you have for the people?
Oh, okay. Yes, I do have one. I just need to pull it up here. Here we go. From Bam Bam of the 21st Ricky Pierce division, a.k.a. the Flying Big Paper Daddies, one of the best Sicko Brigade names that we have here. You can join the Sicko Brigade, join subtext.com/Locked On Hornets. If you've never signed up before, you can get a 7 or 14-day free trial. You just go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Hornets, and you will find out which one of those you get. Okay, here's the question. Good morning. What does a successful and unsuccessful offseason look like for the Hornets? In my opinion, success and unsuccessful can be defined by what our offense looks like. Based on what we saw this season, I believe our defense will make some strides, but I suspect if we don't make roster moves for more shooting and wing size, we'll find ourselves finishing similar to what we did this season.
Go first, Nata. What you got?
They just need to pick a direction. They need to have proof of concept. We saw essentially that defensively, Charles Lee is going to hang his hat on that. But clearly, there's a need for shooters. There's a need for. Last year was an evaluation year. I need to actually see like what the plan is now. It can't be this amorphous thing where, hey, LaMelo gets hurt, Brandon gets hurt. Okay, let's go win 19 games and pray for a top 3 pick. Like, I need actual direction. I need to feel like decent. I need to feel decent about this team and not be banging the under immediately in September when I see this roster.
Yeah, proof of concept is a good one because I was just going to go with concept. And so the fact that you go with proof of concept, that's better. You went the extra mile on that, and I appreciate that. The only thing about proof of concept is that happens during the season. And so I'm taking this literally. We had a nice concept last offseason. Everybody gave a thumbs up to Jeff Peterson and company for how they operated. That was when we were allowed to say Josh Green on this show. Josh Green was a nice enough pickup for only a second-round pick. You made the Tijan Salon pick, which was probably the biggest polarizing decision that Jeff Peterson had made. But all the other decisions, I think we all welcomed with how they operated. I think we were taking the over on the projected win totals last season.
Y'all took that.
Oh, shots fired.
Yeah, I guess so. I know that we still didn't think that they were going to be above a play-in team. Like everything maxed out, perfectly executed. It was going to look like a 7 seed. I did not think they were going to be a top 6 seed. And then, of course, a 19-win season happened, and it's because of injuries, and it's because of a whole bunch of other stuff. I want to feel good about some smart, heady moves that they make with some of the signings that they have. What happens with Tre Mann? I think Tre Mann on a decent contract, which actually I think is probable more so than possible. Tre Mann back on a decent contract is something I would deem successful. Can you give me, if we use Detroit as the blueprint, can you go out and give me a Malik Beasley compared signing? Is there something like that? $6 million for 1 year or 2 years, $12 million for an impactful signing. I think that's something that I would welcome also. And then, of course, just the health, which goes without saying. But that's my abstract way of looking at concept. And then hopefully they provide that proof of concept once we get to the regular season next season.
And we've seen more video of Tre Mann working out, and he looks like he's moving around really well. So I think we can be confident that because honestly, having not seen him for so long after the initial back injury and getting the disc news and then getting some news after that it wasn't progressing along, I was starting to lose confidence that we might ever see the same Tre Mann. So it's been good to see these videos, and we'll just have to wait to see how the contract situation resolves itself. Back to Bam Bam's question, what would be a successful or unsuccessful offseason? I'm going to, rather than really focus on individual players or moves that I would like to see, I'm going to go 30,000 foot here and say a successful offseason for the Charlotte Hornets would be giving Charles Lee a roster of players that match the kind of team that he wants to run. Yeah. Because I think they hired a young coach, and though he came from championship pedigree, and I think a lot of people were confident that he would be a good coach, you just never know. You never know if a guy's going to be able to come in and meet the moment and take the big boy chair and do something with it. Well, Charles Lee did that. Like, he came in immediately, summer league. He was getting on guys. He was holding players accountable. He was transforming players like Nick Smith Jr. into viable defenders. And he got buy-in from the biggest players. He never lost the locker room. So all that's done. And you had to evaluate, if you're Schlotkin and you're Jeff Peterson, you're newish too. You had to come in and evaluate this roster and see what you had and what you didn't have. And while you didn't get the greatest opportunity to do that because of injuries, I think you have enough information now to make some moves in terms of both keeping certain players and letting certain players go. I think that Charles Lee came in early in his coaching debut and said, I want to shoot a lot of threes. I want to do a little bit more switching on defense, and didn't necessarily have the personnel to do some of the things that they did in Boston that won them a championship. And I want the Hornets to find players, bring those players in that can allow him to shoot, to actually shoot more threes, make more threes, and become a more switchable defense. That's what I want. I think that would be if I come away and I say they have remade this roster such that I feel like it's a Charles Lee roster, then that's a success.
The problem is, like, I see that direction and I understand why you want that direction. The question is, do the Hornets have the assets to do it without burning one of the picks that they have right now? That's my biggest question. Do they have the assets to do that? Because I would love to see that. I would love to see guys that actually play defense consistently, and it's not one of those things where you're constantly running behind a toddler, like Charles Lee's running behind a toddler, telling him, "Hey, don't stick your finger in the outlet." So that's the thing. It's I struggle with it because I do want to see that kind of. I want to see them pick a direction. I just hope that it's sooner rather than later. I just don't see it as sooner, unfortunately.
Good batch of answers. I feel strong about that. Bam Bam. You ask a good question. I feel like you got good answers. We move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We have another mock draft for you. Maybe we get to some other combine questions as well. That's all still to come. Final segment, LOH. Other combine notes, just real quickly before we get to a mock draft here, Doug. I want to go down a list of guys and drills. It's not just going to be the shuttle, but guys and drills or test that I think are the most interesting pairings. And so you mentioned VJ Edgecombe VJ Edgecombe, height. Because whatever, pro day, agent, they're all going to give him about 3 inches, okay? The combine will reveal exactly how tall he is. And now, not so much standing reach, because the guys will like finagle their standing reach where they'll like sink their shoulder, or they'll like get on their tippy toes a little bit. There's some finagling of the standing reaches, but VJ Edgecombe height. The Dylan Harper shooting drills, you got to be careful with the shooting drills. We all remember what happened with James Bouknight. I don't know how much that actually matters with nobody in your face defending you. I mean, hell, we were trying to make Donovan Clingan this excellent three-point shooter with what he did. I say that with just a little bit of hesitancy, but I do. Basically, that's just a way for me to say I think the shooting for Dylan Harper is going to be interesting going in, just to see how successful he can be his first and second year in the league before maybe developing that a little bit later on. Final two, some Duke guys, Con Knipple vertical and Khaman Maluach 3-cone shuttle.
Yes.
Standing reach. Like, I'm really in terms of just like what I'm most interested in. I'm really interested in the testing for a Maluach. If all these guys were to suit up, I think Maluach would be a really interesting guy.
No, he's probably the most fascinating guy for me that's projected in the lottery, because if he tests well, he's not leaving the top 10. He ends up becoming that best center, despite the fact that the tape is not really his best friend, especially considering the last game he played. But I do think he's probably the most fascinating guy, because I think like he tests well and he's not leaving the top 7. Like
Derik Queen shuttle and like quickness testing too. I think that's one. If you just defensively,
but I think that's one of those where I think the tape is like he tests well, but the tape is going to basically say, look, he needs work. And
sure,
I think if Maluach tests excellently in everything, he's going to get drafted over Derik Queen. However, there's a scenario where he does not test well and Derik Queen still gets drafted ahead of him.
Doug, do you like those pairings? Do you have another one that you wanted to add on before a mock draft reveal?
So I don't know how much interviewing teams do at the combine, or if they do that when they bring guys in individually. But if there's any conversation between teams and Ace Bailey, like we're not going to get to see that. But I think those conversations, because again, there's this huge question about what kind of player do we think we need Ace Bailey to be if we were to draft him at 3, 4, or 5. And what kind of player does Ace Bailey actually want to be or envision himself to be? And I think, unfortunately, the Hornets are in a situation where there is a bit of a misalignment between those two things with Mark Williams. And you can see where sort of that leads you, what kind of path that leads you down. So you want to be sure if you draft Ace Bailey, whether you're 3, 4, 5, wherever, if you decide to draft Ace Bailey, I think you've got to be as sure as you can be that you understand what you want Ace Bailey to be, and Ace understands that, and that those are the same things. Because I think different teams could want different things out of him.
Absolutely. I do think that, like, if Ace Bailey sees himself as a franchise cornerstone scorer, I'm not sure that's his actual role. But if he's talking about being a top 2, top 3 guy on a rotation, in a championship rotation, and he's a guy that he figures, okay, I'll give up a bunch of my shots and I'm going to relearn a little bit about how I play. I'm going to distribute the ball more. I'm going to do a bunch of different things, and I'm willing to be coachable. Then that changes everything, and he's absolutely the 3rd or 4th pick in this draft. If not, and the Rutgers tape is out there, so there's going to be a lot of convincing he's going to have to do. But if he's willing to be coachable, he's a top 5 pick. If he's not, and he's just a Rutgers Ace Bailey through and through, then it gets kind of dicey. He's still going to be a top 5 pick, but he's going to be drafted closer to 5, 6, 7 than he is 3, 4, 5.
The real answer to this question is that it's a case-by-case basis, but I can't help but think of the Stefon Castle, I'm a point guard quote from last year, yeah. and that being such a talking point to the point where we're like, okay, this is a little weird. Do we have to draft him if we don't envision him as that point guard? And then he goes on to win Rookie of the Year, deservedly so. Like, Stefon Castle was good. It was a weak class. I'm not saying you would win it in a lot of the other classes, but Stefon Castle, he looks like a real dude. And he didn't have to explicitly play point guard, but that quote was enough to at least be a talking point. So I just wonder, it's a case-by-case basis as to how much these quotes actually matter when you draft them. But the Stefon Castle conversation last year was fun and interesting, and something we certainly discussed quite a bit.
The thing with the Stefon Castle conversation, I remember us talking about that, and I was like, yeah, he can think he's a point guard, but the NBA is going to tell him he's a two guard. There was that conversation. But also the difference between Castle and Bailey a little bit. Castle came with an NBA-ready defensive skill to him that he kind of showed in spurts for the season. I'm not sure what Ace Bailey's NBA skill is. I'm not sure. And that's the thing that scares me. He can be a dynamite scorer, but he needs he's a volume scorer right now. And that's the one thing the Hornets don't need, is another volume scorer that really doesn't pass.
Yeah, and I don't think role conversation, to the Stefon Castle point, because what's he playing? Yeah, he's playing two guard now, essentially, right? They traded for De'Aaron Fox. Like, role conversation is silly to have with most rookies, because their situation over the first three seasons of their career, the situation, the context around them, the team construction is going to change under their feet pretty dramatically most of the time. So that conversation is something I think that most teams can look past, particularly if you're going to be as talented as I think everyone thought Stefon Castle was going to be. I think more to what I was saying was, like, what kind of things do you, in terms of skill development, what kind of things do you think you need to improve upon, or focus on as you begin your NBA career? Those things are super important. And what things do you pride yourself on? And the answer to those questions, I think, for Ace Bailey are going to be tremendously important. And it's important that he be honest about those things, because I think for him too, it benefits him to go to a team that matches, what he thinks he can provide, because what you think you're going to provide is what you're going to skill up on. It's what you're going to improve upon. So if the Hornets want him to be a defender and he says, yeah, of course, coach, I'm a defender, but doesn't really want that, then, that's going to be a bad match. It's going to be bad. It's just going to be as bad for him as it is going to be for the Hornets.
Yeah, clearly a big difference for sure. It's very different. I think for sure the interview process, GMs will tell you, is the most important thing that they do at the Combine, NFL and NBA. I will say, if the Hornets don't get the first overall pick, then I have heard rumblings about Cooper Flagg wanting to play center. So just letting you know, Cooper don't draft him first or second. If the Hornets are there at third, I think that's when you probably take the chance on Cooper. But look, if he wants to play center and the Hornets don't have that first overall pick, I just let him keep on.
We don't care. You could play fullback for all I care. I don't give a damn. We'll put a helmet on you. We'll give you shoulder pads. I don't care. We'll just come on to Charlotte.
Just be careful, Washington. If you get it. That's what I've heard, that he's strictly a post-up center that doesn't like to run the floor. That's what
unless he fails the shuttle drill. In that case, I'm out. I'm out on Flagg.
There you go. All right, Doug, tell us about your mock draft. What you got today?
So Jonathan Wasserman of Bleacher Report has updated, and he has a full 2-round mock draft updated on May 6th, and he did a lottery sim. Unfortunately for the Hornets, that did not go well for them. They fall 3 spots to the 6th position. The worst they can do is 7, so second worst outcome for the Charlotte Hornets. But one of the best outcomes, in my opinion, outside of Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, the Charlotte Hornets in this draft, they land Trey Johnson, the shooting guard out of Texas. The pro comp is Tyler Hero. He is 6'6", 190, 19 years old. Scouts believe, Wasserman writes, scouts believe Trey Johnson will remain in the top 5 mix with eye test approval on the self-creation and shot making that fueled his 19.9 points per game. He'd slide between LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller for a Hornets team that just tried to acquire another shooter in Dalton Connect at the trade deadline.
Trey Johnson would be the ideal outcome at 3. Trey Johnson would be the ideal outcome at 4. Yeah. Trey Johnson would be the ideal outcome at 5. And he damn sure is the ideal outcome for the Hornets at 6. Yeah. That is quite literally, if they're not going to get Flagg, he might be the guy I would tell the Hornets to go get the most. Because again, as we've talked about before, he's the guy that I think suffered the most due to crappy coaching. I think he's better than Tyler Hero. I think he has number 1 scorer possibility, and he scores in volume. He's a little bit of a better volume scorer, and he does a lot more in terms of ball distribution. Again, Trey Johnson is very high on my board. He might be number 3 or number 4 at this point.
Seems like the kind of guy that's not going to be your best player, but could be your best scorer.
I think he can. I think he can be your best player. I absolutely believe he can be your best player. I do think that he's got the skill and the score. The self-creation is what sets him apart from a lot of the guys in this draft, where he can get his own shot off. I'm not sure VJ can. I have issues. Again, we've talked about Ace's issues. His shot creation is up there with Dylan Harper. So I do think that this guy is going to end up being third pick eventually when the information catches up with all the writers at this point.
He's easy to fall in love with, especially with his movement, with his ability to shoot as a movement shooter, even as a catch and shoot guy. The numbers tell you that he's awesome shooting the basketball. But also, one thing I really like is his handle, man. Like, he can handle and shoot. I'm good. He needs to get to the rim, needs to get stronger. That's some typical rookie stuff. But yeah, he can shoot. Easy to fall in love with. All right, second round picks. Did you want to reveal those before the end of the show today?
Yes, and while I scroll to do that, Nata, give me the Trey Johnson versus Khaman Maluach. Like, both of those players are available for the Charlotte Hornets.
It's Trey, but it's close. It's like the board now for me is Cooper, Dylan, Trey, Khan, VJ, Ace. But it's very close because I love Khan, and I think what Khan, like, unfortunately, Khan is going to be one of those guys that's going to be looked at like Christmas socks. And it's not necessarily something that you want, but it's something that you
Great draft pick, Christmas socks. Loved Christmas socks. It did really well in the shuttle drill.
Well, again, helped him move side to side. So, but the big thing for like Khaman Maluach is he can defend and he can shoot, and those are two things that we know Charles Lee really loves. And I think he's going to be better as a pro than he was at Duke. And that's saying a lot.
Okay, here are the second round picks. Nata, you give me the quick blurb on these two players. With the 33rd pick, the Charlotte Hornets select Johni Broome from Auburn.
Wow.
Johni Broome is a very interesting pick, especially for a team that has that already has centers that can play offensively but have issues defensively. That'd be a very interesting pick. But at the same point, I think he's a guy that you can develop and put in Greensboro for a year, and then he might end up being your backup center in a year, basically.
Can play power forward, right? I think he's got some. You don't think so?
I don't trust his foot speed. I don't trust his defensive foot speed.
Yeah,
he was picked
fair
on
enough.
a
Maybe
lot
that's the case.
At Auburn.
Okay. What you got, Doug?
With the 34th pick, out of Arkansas, the Charlotte Hornets take Adu Thero.
That is a really, really good pick for a team that needs a lot of swing forwards. Thero was the second best player behind Boogie Fland in Arkansas. I do believe that's the kind of archetype, kind of a James Posey type guy, 3-and-D, which the Hornets need a lot of.
James Posey. That is how you end a pod right there with a James Posey mention. I absolutely love it, you sicko. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. Go check out Nada's pod, Ion College Basketball Podcast with Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander. Check out Doug's other pod, Locked On NBA, and go read everyhornetsboxscore.com, Doug Branson Substack, and listen to me too. You got a lot of assignments, but achieve all of them.
You can do
Walker Mail, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. on Wes and Walker. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Shuttle me.